Yeah, I'm wondering if you guys are recording these meetings.
Right when you started talking, he realized he hadn't hit the record button, so he just hit it.
Okay, because I'd love to see last time that I missed, but I couldn't find a link anywhere.
No. And what we'll do is we will post this on our private page
On the
Oh,
web.
good.
on the website, so it'll be up there tonight or tomorrow.
Private meaning private for this group.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, Charles.
Well, I'm doing pretty good. Not suffering from frostbite down here.
Oh, no. Or anywhere else in New Mexico.
105.
Wow.
The last I looked, it was 104. So, and it's been kind of a hot summer. Probably more than half the days since the 1st of June have been in the low 100s for the high. Now, the mornings aren't too bad. They're 65, 70, something like that. But in the afternoon, it gets toasty.
Where are you?
Las Cruces.
Okay, Joyce, you're up last. Batting cleanup.
Oh, chilly. Get the dogs out of here.
Yep, I've been busy as an advocate for nursing homes and assisted living residents. So it's been pretty heavy. Just a day ago, new guidelines for families to be able to finally visit residents with the construction of certain barriers, plexiglass, etc. So that's a big deal. A lot of residents have been depressed, and family members have been very disappointed they can't visit other than phone calls and window visits in the 100-degree heat. So I'm really happy today that, you know, these new guidelines come through.
Okay, so I'm going to share the screen, and you will see our private website.
Well, no, the page on our regular
Right. Well,
website.
yeah, okay.
It's just not published publicly.
So nobody else could see this unless they get a link. And we'll just quickly go, the background materials we've got is our vision and framework, which is 3 pages, research process and topic assignments, and then the inventory template, which we'll go over in just a second, and a proposal for a review committee that Joyce put together. And then—
And Bruce.
Oh, and Bruce. And
Yes.
we've got our first research brief in from Carl, a draft, and he said he didn't need to present. And it's a good thing because he's not on the call yet, or no, he's not on the call. And then all the research drafts.
The inventories. Yeah.
And so if you don't see one of yours on here, just let me know. I had missed one from Greg and put it up today, and a couple came in kind of late. And so I uploaded them. This is way easy to do, and it's much easier for anybody else to use who doesn't typically use Google Drives and Google Docs and stuff like that. And so all of these are PDFs. You can open them up, you can read them, and when you have something to submit, just send it to me.
Well, and if you see something here that you would like to get, I might send them out, but as a Word file so that you can use it, you know, because obviously if it's a PDF, you can't really do much with it but read it. Just let us know and we can send you the Word version.
Okay, so now we're going to take a minute just to look at the research inventory template. Oh.
Maybe, is it?
Oh, it's in edit mode. So I'm going to have to do this. And there it is. So what I did was I started with Joyce's template and then used Adam's outline for his research inventory, and basically started off with a problem. And basically the reason I like this is it kind of tells the story of your ultimate research piece.
Is this for the inventory
Yes.
or for the brief? Okay.
Inventory. This is for
Okay.
the inventory. So it's a problem statement, and then you'll see he's got a couple of links below. This could, ultimately, there could be 3, there could be 1, or a video that outline the problem. So he's got a statement about what the problem is, and then 1 or 2 links that outline it. And then he distinguished between the problem itself and the history of the problem. And so that may not be germane in all instances, but if it is, then it's the same format. Give us a sentence or 2 at the most, and then a link or 2. And one of the things Roxanne mentioned the other day, maybe it was even today, is that also consider whether charts, any charts or
No.
graphics or things like
Oh.
that you see, memes
Well, but
that are
that's,
particularly germane, you could report that at the end of the,
well, actually what I was thinking about, and that we're talking about 2 different things here, and I'm getting confused, maybe nobody else is, but a lot of the research inventories, that initial
That's this.
research, okay, that's this. And and a lot of people have done them. Are you saying that everybody needs to go back and redo them in this format?
It depends. I mean, it's their tool. So you don't have to go back, but there's some that have come in that just are a list of resources without really being annotated and so forth. And so the thought was this would give people something as a target for what, and so rearranging the order of what they have might make sense. But this is your tool so that you
Okay.
can do your own research as you go forward.
And then when Paul just mentioned that I had said something about graphs and things, what I was thinking is for the final research briefs, not sure what we're calling them yet. I know we're not calling them white papers any longer. If during your research journeys you find graphs, charts, other sort of illustrations, photos even, I can work on getting permission to reuse those. In most cases, it's not a problem because we're not selling anything. We're a nonprofit, so people are usually happy to let us reuse. But just keep that in mind that, we don't want these things to just be dry page after page with text. We want to add some visual interest to it too.
Greg, you have a question?
I just think if you could put at the very top, maybe as a header, because Roxanne's question was mine too. Just put up there somewhere,
Okay.
research from material inventory. Just put the word inventory up there, maybe as a header or something.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very good. Then preliminary research objective. What are you trying to study? What is the area that you're researching within the larger problem that you've defined? And then from there on, it's simply the sequencing of articles that you found and a description of their relevance.
Mhm.
And I stopped at 3. You might have 10. Joyce originally had 10, but it just seemed like you get the idea after 3. So you
As a
can
template, yeah.
as a template. And so you use as many as you can, as you want. And then any organizations that you see as being major proponents, give us the URL and maybe a sentence about why you think they're so important. Any interviews possible, people we might want to interview about this, and then we also had just the thought of any music, dance, art, theater, anything like that that might amplify or make a little more fun the piece. So that is the Transformation Study Group's inventory, and I will.
And did you send everybody the link to that?
Yes,
Okay,
they've
so you
got
should
the
all
link.
have the
Everyone
link.
has
Is that in Word format or
PDF. PDF. If you want it in Word format, just simply write to me. I can't really post Word documents on the website. I don't think so.
Right.
Let's
I
look
would,
into that.
yes.
Okay, well, just write to me. I'll not remember, Joyce.
Okay, I will.
Or if you think everybody would just like a copy of the Word version, we'll just send that out
Yeah,
to the whole
Yeah,
group.
just do
that's a
that.
good idea.
Use it or don't use it. Yeah, then we don't have
Yeah.
to 7 or 8 emails from people asking for it.
Right,
Okay.
right. So we'll send that out to everybody.
Okay.
And now I don't see the agenda. Is it Wendy who's up next?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Wendy, you're up, and I don't know if you are allowed to share screen. I think you are.
It says host disabled participant screen sharing.
Oh.
All right, we can change that.
Okay.
I'm going there.
You can make her,
I'm making you host.
so you can do that.
Okay.
Now you're going to have to make me host later. 'Cause you're not taking over.
We'll show you how to do it. It's easy.
I love it. Okay, I promise I won't take over. I promise. Okay. So, anyways, this is fun for me as an opportunity to share this with you. It basically is the last 20 years of my working life that I created out of my studying and research, this collective wisdom gathering process. But basically the line, "We are smarter than me," is the core and the root issue that collective makes possible, is out of the me and into we. So this is my experience. I got to, I'll just do this really quick. I came to Albuquerque as the lead singer of a band. It was at the Sheridan Inn down in Albuquerque, and sang my little heart out. So I didn't, but that was my first time in Albuquerque. I've been a senior minister, pretty large church. It was 350 people in Austin, Texas. Choir director several times. Actually, at the local ACSCL, I actually directed a choir of 70 people back in between 2006, 2008. And then on the front lines with LGBTQI activists for 15 years in my past history. My practice, 25 years as a relational and organizational development coaching consultant, and then founded the director of the Center of Consciousness Education and the Institute for Relationship Education. So here, that was in Albuquerque here. My specialty focus is relational interaction patterning and conducting collective wisdom gathering projects. And by the way, that came out of my own personal experience as that minister of that big church. I really had to do some deep shadow work after I resigned from that place. And I discovered in my master's program, I said, I would never do this again, you know, be the senior minister of a congregation for all the drama that happened, and just said, I will go on to get my master's degree. And that's where I was actually created this process. And then I facilitate relational interaction agreements for couples, companies, and organizations using collective wisdom and consent decision-making that I'm going to be talking about. And the heart of my being in the world is living to heal the us versus them divide in human and eco relationships by unearthing the collective we of which every I is a part. So that's pretty much it. There's my book. Actually wrote a book about it. And the kind of the major protocol in it, and gives real examples of relational interaction agreements for couples, small workers, and for organizations. So I developed this in my master's leadership management practicum project at John F. Kennedy School of Management, 2001. So what I put here is that we want to learn just about collective wisdom gathering process. What is it? How do you use it? When to use it? Because you don't use it for every decision-making process. It's very central to adaptive decision-making. So if somebody can do it and it's an expert thing and they can go just do the job because they have the talent to do it, that's not what you use collective wisdom gathering process for. You use it when you use it when you need to learn something, and when you need to glean the picture of the whole and what that voice is in community. So, and for our particular purposes for this team, because considering the possibility of using it, depending on project or other, maybe, to create and change, you can use it mostly as creating and changing any vision, values, project goals of any kind of a team. And it's great to use to keep unnecessary conflict at a low or next to nothing level. So I'm going to very quickly, I'm just going to do number 1 and 2. This is a presentation I've made and done many times. So I'm just doing 1 and 2. And if we want to do 3 and 4 at a later date, we can. So just for context, I don't know how many have heard of Barbara Marx Hubbard at all, but an incredible futurist in her own right. And she passed the last, I think 2 years ago. But she was a mentor of mine. And Barbara asked me this question based on my work. She says, how do we work as a family, as community, and in organizations to support the emerging pluralistic paradigm of relational consciousness? That's a lot of big words. But that was her question. And then stated to me that new social architectures are needed to replace the old to manifest a better future for all peoples in the planet and our ecosystem. So for her, it was, we must learn how to make decisions based on the whole rather than just the parts. And if we're going to have peace on earth, if we're going to have a collective culture that is beneficial to everyone. So collective wisdom gathering, then, the process I'm going to talk about, is a new social architecture, and particularly for decision making. So let's move forward. I'm going to just do a little bit of theory. Some of you may have read these things, but the lesson is that we work, we works. I'm just going to list some references, and there's some scientific information about collective wisdom gathering. The book, We Are Smarter Than Me, that was actually written by thousands of contributors. So it was a real collective writing of a book. Crowdsourcing, some of you might be familiar with Jeff Howe's work. Christian de Quincey's Radical Knowing. The Power of We, Jonathan Tisch with Lowe's Hotels. It's amazing what they do with their all their staff and teams based on collective wisdom. And then Judith Glasser is an incredible gift to collective wisdom. And she, these are 2 books, Creating We and Conversational Intelligence, are her work in the world. My book's listed there. And then Alan Watkins, he wrote this book, Wicked and Wise, How to Solve the World's Toughest Problems, and actually takes collective wisdom and shows how it could work even from a full federal government perspective. So it's pretty interesting. Then there's the book.
What Trump uses?
No. I wish he did. It'd be nice. So then the Collective Intelligence, Creating a Prosperous World at Peace. That is a seminal scientific, basically, book on different authors that have written scientifically how collective intelligence works. And then John Buck and Sharon Vilnius, We the People, is a book about sociocracy. I don't know how many of you have heard of that, but it's a consent model of decision making, and pretty phenomenal in its own right. Then Steve McIntosh's book on developmental politics, real important as we look at legislation, that in his book is really about traditional, modern, and postmodern values being included in any piece of legislation going forward, because all the values of all those 3 different groups have to be met. So great book, and very specific and great ideas. Leadership Without Easy Answers, Ron Heifetz's book, is really wonderful. He goes into great detail on the difference between technical and adaptive decision making and what has to transpire in one or the other, but not both. And sometimes you'll have an issue that's adaptive and technical. And so when you use collective wisdom, you're using either the mix of technical and adaptive, but surely all adaptive issues you use it for. But all the books on collective wisdom, I love the best to help people understand it. It's the easy read if you get it. It's called The Wisdom of Crowds, James Surowiecki. And I'll take you through a few examples to get the hang of what he's talking about. The collective wisdom gathering process that I created meets the conditions of wise crowds, according to James Surowiecki in this book. So you'll see it. The first is you have to have diversity of opinion, and the more diversity, the better. Will always be the case. The second is independence of opinion. So it's not influenced by other people, that you're really getting the gut raw wisdom of every individual that's participating in a study or research project. So we don't do focus groups. You don't do the typical kinds of ways people get together and talk about an issue. You actually get the opinion from individuals solely. Then you put all the opinions from the whole group together and you aggregate the data. Number 4 is it's the method used to turn personal opinion into a collective decision. So there's more behind that and details we could do. But here's a few examples to get the genius of collective wisdom. This was done, it's at a regional fair and it was in England, and 800 people had to guess the weight of an ox. And so they were at a fair and people came through and then they aggregated all the guesses, 800 people. They calculated the mean using a bell curve. The guess of the crowd was 1,197. The actual weight of the ox was 1,198. So just one off the group, the collective. All experts were off by 30% or more. Okay, just so you get the gist of this. The Challenger, the disaster in '86, when that happened, 8 minutes after that disaster, Dow Jones Index saw massive changes happening, just kind of fluctuating. And investors started to dump stocks. So they dumped Rockwell, Lockheed, Martin Marietta, and Morton Thiokol. And all 4 of those were involved in the building of the shuttle. Interesting, 6 months later, this is amazing. The government determined the O-ring manufactured by Thiokol was responsible. And so what I would say by collective wisdom is 30 minutes after the disaster, the stock market knew Thiokol was the problem and was the cause of the explosion. But we don't, that's the collective wisdom coming through the stock market. Interesting. Okay, so those are just a couple examples. There are many more, but some key points about collective wisdom gathering process. This is difficult for many people to do. I just want to say, most people would go, are you kidding me? Okay, so, but key points about the process. Even if you don't know a thing about the stock market, for instance, in Thiokol, whatever, you didn't know anything about it, you're still invited to participate in the research about that drop in the stock market as just a person, anybody. Collective wisdom deems you intelligent, even if you have no personal experience about the topic at hand. And all perspectives matter, as many as possible you want to get. The biggest challenge of the collective wisdom process is the I's. Once you've given your input, you have to be willing to yield to the collective wisdom response. So every I has to give it up. It's called, after you've given it, you let it go, and you let the evidence, the aggregate data guide the group together, and all eyes line up behind it. Collective decisions are made prior to engaging in dialogue or conversation between group members. And that's a real different oddity in collective wisdom there. And the science is based, I don't know, Norman, if any of you have met Norman Johnson up there in Santa Fe, worked at Santa Fe Institute and Los Alamos National Laboratory. But what Norman does is he conducts science-based collective intelligence projects. And I got to meet with him. It was really great. When I had the Center for Consciousness Education here, we were basing that organization from its birth and through to its close, because we couldn't afford to keep going, unfortunately. But until its close, we actually used collective intelligence to make every single decision in terms of the big overarching, not technical issues, but all adaptive issues. And so I went and spoke with him. He has an article, this slide is acknowledging the book he's in, Collective Intelligence, Creating a Prosperous World at Peace. But this quote by Norman, and I love this, is faster change, right? Even now, I think we all feel pushed to make things happen. It's just fast, fast, fast moving, tons of information. But what he says is faster change and greater interdependency have created challenges too complex for one man or woman or just one group of human beings to handle. We just can't do it anymore. It's too much. So something has to change. So these scientifically based studies that Norman did came out with these following comments. Number one is individuals can solve simple or technical problems, no problem. If my printer busts up, I can take care of that technically. I can call Geek Squad, have them replace my printer and be done with it. I don't have to have a group meeting or have a collective decision about it. Collective intelligence is what helps us discern the best answers in a more complex world. So it helps us really get best answers versus the other decision-making styles. And collectives, they found in their studies, outperform individuals. Collectives outperform individuals when it comes to adaptive situations where there's an increase in complexity and needed learning about an issue being faced. So can do it a lot better. Another point is diversity, even in performance, is more important than having the best performers, experts in the group. So experts have a part to play, but they're not the lead on collective wisdom. The best solution from collective data comes from the aggregate of diverse, independent, individual contributions. And I love this last comment, is that collective error is reduced as diversity increases. Some people would find that a conundrum, that's true. And just so you know what happens as a result, collective intelligence is happening all the time. And things happen as a result of it, even as we have not been conscious of it working. But the fall of the Berlin Wall, Norman gave as an example of collective intelligence coming through the people. It wasn't predicted, it wasn't planned locally to take the wall down. It was never a goal of the people who participated. And they could not know that it would be the outcome of their activity that was going on at the time. It just happened via the movement through the collective intelligence of humanity that was there at the time, is how it happened. It just happened. And I don't know about you, but I was shocked when it came down that fast. I was shocked. I was shocked when Russia and the Soviet Union, all that in Tiananmen Square. I mean, you know, there's just amazing things that happen because of collective wisdom. So, oh, sorry. So anyways, Norman told us as an organization that we were a champion of collective intelligence. It was really nice to have struck out and tried to use it as a model. He said it was our model of decision-making honored the current findings of scientific studies and encouraged us to continue moving forward to value and teach collective wisdom gathering techniques. So that's kind of it. Here's some other examples very briefly of collective wisdom. Google, the determination of page ranking and ads, bookies at the casinos, predictions and polls of election outcomes, Amazon determining winners and losers, products, books. Hewlett-Packard uses it for business decisions. The Wiki Encyclopedia is collective wisdom, an act of it. Communities of practice and learning communities are examples of it as well. The best uses, again, are the creation of organizational guiding documents. So the big scope pictures, right? The 50,000 look, and how are we organized? Purpose, principles, values, our core practices, any relational or action agreements, and any visioning or framing of one's future. And again, for all adaptive issues, collective wisdom is good for. These are just questions we asked ourselves at the center. You know, what building would we be housed in? We didn't know, and that changed from time to time. We moved 3 different times. And so we used collective wisdom to discern what our next move or building would be, the programs that we would offer, what are the operational structures that would enable us to live in alignment with our purpose and principles. So all that got done by that. And this is a hypothetical example of a collective wisdom process, the end of it. A question is, what form of organizational structure is best for the organization I was a part of to sustain itself as an online global educator? We were trying to get out of the brick and mortar and go to being a global educator. 30 people participated in making this decision. You'll notice down at the bottom, the slide, it noticed that 13 of the 30 people gave answers that were not similar to any other answer. In collective wisdom, you only see where there has to be agreement of at least 2 or more for it to be, to come out in the aggregated results. Anyone who gave just an individual creative answer, but no one matched up with it, is not included in the aggregated data. So those 13 people had the yield to the we of items 1 through 4 up there where people responded to the question. We had 2 people say we ought to be a spiritual religious 501c3. We had 2 say we should be an educational 501c3. We had 10 people in item number 3 to change to become an LLC, and that was 10. And then the 4th was to check best structural options out with an expert or a CPA, and 3 people thought that. So as a result, what we would do is, the collective wisdom says our best answer is number 3, is to change to become an LLC. The next best one would be is to go to the experts option, and 3 people said that. And then, so what we would try then, the organization would move forward, you would move on number 3. If number 3 didn't work out, you'd go back to the next one, which would be number 4. So does that make sense? I'm doing this really fast because I just want you to get an idea of what it is. So I'm stopping here. This is it. And I hope that was, I don't even know how much time that was, but I tried to get it in there. So I thought, just for the group, you know, you can look at transformation team and see about, you know, what, if it would be beneficial or not to use collective wisdom with any kind of process. And then if you wanted to, and again at a later date, I could actually go through and you could see an example of the application of the collective wisdom gathering process in comparison to the different decision-making styles of unilateral, majority, consensus, collective wisdom, and consent. And you could actually see how and where collective wisdom comes into play as opposed to the other forms of decision-making. But we're all going to use them. We use all 5 forms of decisions, depending on the conditions, right? So we could do it specific to that at a later time. But I'm just going to open it up for questions, comments, and I can pull this back.
Wendy, I thought you were going to give us an example with some kind of, you know, there would be some kind of exercise in which we use the process, because it's pretty abstract at this point.
Right.
So is that what you're planning to do, or what?
Well, I don't know that we can do that with the time we have. If we're going to do a full process with it, I'm happy to do that at some point because we need to do it. But what I have after this is just to describe unilateral, majority vote. This is how it goes. And then it goes to consensus, and then we flip into, then we go to relational conscious, and then we would get to collective wisdom and consent. And then we could go through an example in the tail end of this. But this is
Sorry, I was just saying, how long would it take for us to do an exercise? Or two?
Well, you know, I wonder if we could come up with, like, is there a question the group has right now? I could walk us through it.
I have a question, Wendy. So
Yeah.
in the example that you just gave, where there were 4 different possibilities and one had 10 responses,
Right.
that to me looked like the majority. So the majority said, or 10 said this, and so that's what you decided on. Is that right?
Nope.
Look like
Not a
plurality to me. 10 out of 30.
It's 10 out of 30.
Yeah, that's
Only
plurality.
1/3.
Well, 13 didn't even count. So it was,
Right.
only, it was
Well,
10 out of
And they don't count. But they don't.
So 10 out of 17 is a majority.
Yeah, and 10 out of 30 is a plurality.
Yeah, I have a few questions. Have
Okay.
you finished?
I'm open.
I have a bunch of questions, actually fascinating, by the way. Congrats, thank you for
You're
offering
welcome.
this. First is, you know, what is N in any given situation? What is the minimum number of a collective wisdom group? So I'm just going to rattle these off and, you know, let you address them in whatever way you'd like. Who does the actual framing of the question? I think that's the most important issue. You know, how the question is framed as to how people react seems to me to be fairly important. Third thing, relationship with algorithms. you had a Google thing up there for a while, and I wonder, are these algorithms based on collective wisdom of some sort, or are they just some kind of, guy or people inputting and then hoping something good comes out? The old garbage in, garbage out thing. And then finally, has this, on a practical level, has this ever been used in a kind of instant referendum way to make governing or policy decisions? Does this even apply to the collective wisdom concept? All right, I threw a lot at you. I don't know if you.
Yeah. Well, first of all, Norman, I based my science on him because he's been studying collective wisdom for a long time. And Norman said, if you can get, the thing is to have as much diversity as possible. So you want as many people as possible to participate.
Is there a minimum though? Is there a minimum?
He said a minimum of 10.
Okay.
But again, diversity of the 10, right? It's got to be a diverse crowd. It can't be everybody that's the same folks. So you've got to have as high level diversity as you can get. And you might need to review your questions. There were a lot for me.
Yeah, who does the framing of a question? I mean, that seems to me,
the group
it's
does.
almost everything.
The group does. By collective.
No, how can a group, someone has to come up, for example, what form of, here, you have it, what form of organizational structure, who decided that that's the way that question is simply
it came out of our group. We needed to have an organizational structure that would enable us to be an online global educator, and it needed to change from the brick and mortar organizational structure. So we were just looking to what would that be? So it was the question.
The other two questions were relationship with algorithms, and the last one, which is pretty interesting to me personally, is has it ever been used in a kind of instant referendum method? Yet. Yeah. Does it even apply in that kind of?
I don't know. Well, and again, I would want to know your term of instant referendum.
Well, there's an important decision to be made, and be it some community level, local level, or even a larger level. Everybody tunes in, and you just get a response that's based on the collective wisdom. Maybe I'm not seeing that.
Oh, it's okay.
Maybe it doesn't apply in the sense.
Yeah, that's something. So
yeah, it depends on what an instant referendum is. I would need to look at the conditions of that and say what's needed for that, and look at that. In terms of algorithms, I have no algorithms. To tell you the truth, I still do this. I still need to get it into an app, and I'm looking for someone who would create an app so that the aggregation of data can happen much faster than what I can do. But I could only do 4 organizations a year when I did it, because I aggregated the data myself.
An app would be based on an algorithm. So you need some kind of formula or some kind of process, some kind of algorithmic process to come up with the result.
It could be, but what they're
be done by a computer.
What you're looking for is the agreement of responses, the similarity of response. You're not looking for differences. You're looking for where do people come together. Like on this example here, we had 30 people say a lot of different things, but only 10 said number 3.
Yeah.
Only, okay.
No, go ahead, Wendy. I thought you were done.
Yeah. So anyways, in other words, when we aggregated the data, this was done in a room with these 30 people, and they did their responses, and we did the collective together. We brought it together. We went literally on a flip chart. 2 said that spiritual religious 501c3. 2 said educational 501c3. 10 said this. 3 said that, and 13 were totally different answers that there was no shared agreement in it.
Right. Wendy, question. What if the change should become an LLC where 4 or 5? So you even have a smaller plurality. How would you then decide what to do?
Then you would go with 5 or 4, the highest number.
The highest number, okay.
And again, it's not a be all end all. You might get into doing number 3, and then we run into a problem in that it didn't really work. So what the group would then go back to is the number 4, sorry, on the list. Say, well, that didn't work, the LLC. So we need to now go look at structural options with an expert or CPA. I'm sorry, I touched my screen.
And who decides how similar the answers are?
Whoever is, like, for me personally, I do it in my business. I'm the observer, and I'm the one that takes the data and I organize it according to agreement, or whoever is. It's not just me. I've had teams work on this with me. I've done this with an HOA, with homeowners association. I've done this with, 30 different churches, pretty nonprofits, and I did it recently with the film corporation. So interesting.
Wendy, how different is this than consensus building?
Yeah, very different. Because you don't, consensus, you sit in a room and you hear every voice, right?
Right.
Every voice. There's no sitting in the room with this one.
It's all individual, that's it.
And then you bring the data back to the group saying, this is what the whole said, this is what the collective said, and it gives us a decision about how to move forward.
Well, Wendy, in this example, were these things described to people? Was number one before they voted or before they came back with their?
No.
So you had each person had to figure out what a religious, spiritual 501c3 is?
Or they knew it as a selection or an option.
Well, are they given time to do some research?
Nope. You're in the room and we make the decisions. We allow the information to come forward from the people.
But if you don't know what you're voting on or what these things are, then there's.
But we're not voting on them. We're not voting on these. These came literally from the individual ideas of every person participating.
Okay.
So I'm imagining that the persons who said spiritual religious 501c3 knew what that was. And I'm imagining that the people that knew educational 501c3 knew what that was.
Okay.
Yeah, we did not, this is the thing about collectivism. You don't feed people information and say, tell us what you think about what we said to you. You say, what do you say? And then we as the leaders take that as the genius of the whole, and then the leadership level is their onus is to actually implement that strategy.
And how would you apply this to what we're doing?
Well, that was going to be my question, but I don't think we're going to be able to completely unearth that in this session because we still have like a half hour of other discussion to have. And so what I was going to suggest is, are there one or two people or more who would like to work with Wendy? Maybe as a starting point, I could put together 3 or 4 kinds of decisions, that we have to make. And then you could have a conversation with Wendy, whoever's really interested in exploring this, to see how this could apply directly to those kinds of decisions, and maybe bring that back to the group next time. And maybe we do that. I do think it's really interesting, but it's also a little like when Rich asked the question about what if it was only 5 people who had said change to become an LLC. It seems like, especially in that context, for that kind of a decision, we're not making those kinds of decisions. But that would be 5 out of 30 people making a pretty big decision. And that seems curious to me. Yet there's a lot of background material that we've heard that seems to suggest that this does work pretty well. So I think we do want to explore it more deeply. And so everybody has their own rosters. It's all on the internal web page. And so you can just go and get Wendy's email address, or you can put it up there right now, Wendy. And anybody who's interested in working with Wendy on this, you can do your own doodle poll to get a a team meeting together and go from there. Does that seem like a sensible way to go?
Yeah.
How about nods of heads or shaking?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, does that look good? Okay. You know, that we would be, we would need another hour
Yep.
to do that
At least.
at least.
Yeah.
And so it's probably a good idea to have some other people do some background legwork on it, thinking about it. And there is phone number and email address on the screen. And so.
Or in the chat.
Or in the chat, yeah. And now let's go to.
Wait, I think we need Wendy to give us back the hosting. If you can do that, just go up to.
All done. All done.
Oh, you did it. Okay, great. Thank you.
You got it.
Okay. So now we're going to share the screen again, but now we're going to take a look at, what are we taking? Oh, Joyce's piece. So I'm going.
Joyce and Bruce.
And Bruce, I'm
Yeah.
sorry.
And you. Okay, you're gonna bring that up?
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
going to take me just a second.
Yeah.
Okay, Bruce is going to start and then I'll take over the rest. But I do see some applicability with collective wisdom and maybe certain aspects of what we're proposing or need to be proposing for the advisory team.
Okay, give us a second. Paul's poking around. I thought he had it ready, but he's having a little trouble.
Copy URL.
Okay, maybe, okay.
Maybe I didn't copy the URL right.
It's listed on your
No, there we go.
materials.
Yeah, it's all right. We got it now. So
And
go
now I
ahead.
got to share screen and then
You
we're
have to go
in.
back to the,
Yeah.
yeah, okay.
Okay, there it is, everybody. So this is what Joyce and Bruce came up with in terms of, you'll recall that last time we talked about the need for a more diverse group to have an influence on what we're doing. And why don't you take 10 or 15 minutes to lay this out, and then I'll follow that up with about 5 minutes on what I've been doing with Yucca and Sunrise.
Okay, so Joyce and I conversed a little bit, and then we came up with this draft, and we edited it and so forth. And basically, we're saying that, you know, this transformation study group is mostly, if not all, white and all over 55 or 60, or maybe even that more. I'm not exactly sure what everybody's age is. And so we felt that we needed people to, we needed, if we're going to present this as a valid research, we need to get opinions and feedback from minorities, from youth, from a wider, broader spectrum of people than we represent. And so that's the purpose. And then it wouldn't be necessarily that we would take all the feedback and incorporate everything, but at least we'd have some valid feedback that would inform whether we have been inclusive and whether we've really touched a broader spectrum of ideas and influence than just you know, people in the study group. So we want to have a small group, 4 or 5 people that are informed in these areas that we're studying, and that are racially mixed, gender, youth, ethnically balanced. Now, in 5, with only 5 people, you only have maybe one, and maybe it should be bigger, but that's what we came up with. I mean, so you want to have some youth represented, some you know, racial mix, ethnic mix, Latin, Latino, Native American, and so forth, and people who have experience in these different areas that we're dealing with, and also have at least 2 people study or reviewing each of the documents. So it's not just one person's opinion. So you would have maybe a Native American and someone from a youth organization, or so there's a greater feedback and just from one person or one perspective. And Joyce is going to talk about the criteria that we would give them to use in giving the feedback. And we feel that this is really essential to making our studies valid for the broader New Mexico community. I don't know. I'm thinking that maybe there's one person who would lead this group, or maybe not, and each study would be sent to 2 or 3 people who have interest or expertise in this particular area that we're talking about. So that's the basic idea, and that's the basic framework of the membership of this. And of course, we didn't really get into how we would decide which 4 or 5 or 6 people would make up this. Maybe we would have a subcommittee of our group get together, Joyce and me and maybe a few others, to decide who we would want to invite to be in this review group. You want to add anything to that, Joyce?
Well, I think what Wendy presented is interesting because initially we were looking at people that might have some experience or expertise in a specific genre or area that we're interested in. But, you know, what she's presented, it would be not necessarily people with experience or background. So it's an interesting concept to just think about. So I just wanted to put that out.
Okay, well, you want to go ahead with the roles and responsibilities?
Yes. So what we initially thought would be essential is that we would create some guidelines or criteria with which individuals are going to be reviewing the studies. And they would be given direction or a format or no format to provide recommendation to our group. And the studies would be reviewed to take a look at the recommendations being made and any comments that might need to be addressed. And we would remind the review committee that they are an advisory body versus a decision-making body. And the working procedures, the review committee members would take a look and review the documents and provide some level of advice or comments based on the assessment criteria or on specific issues that they are reviewing. So here is just a list in one word that would give the evaluation criteria some framework. Typically, it needs to be objective, non-biased, accurate, relevant, effective, sustainable, credible. And we wouldn't be meeting, obviously, as a group necessarily. And we would structure any communication via Zoom or conference call. The timetable would be decided to be determined, and there would be some kind of a format for them to provide their recommendations and submissions. And this is a maybe, may or may not be necessary to create a flow chart as to the movement of the proposal, you know, process from A to Z. So that's pretty much what we came up with initially, and obviously we're open to comments, questions, and suggestions.
So I don't know whether let me say what my discussion or our discussion with the board elicited, and then we'll have both, because they had a completely different way of looking at it. And that was for a group of youth to come and maybe present to us for an entire Zoom meeting, 90 minutes, on they take a look at the issues we're studying, and they give us some grounding background perspective before we get too far into doing what we're doing. They point, and by the way, both of these could happen, and it's not mutually exclusive. But they would give us some background so that we had an idea what their reaction was to say, if they looked over even just the research briefs that were inventories, the research inventories, they would get a sense of what how we're thinking, what kind of information we're looking to inform what we're doing. You don't necessarily see a full point of view or conclusions, but you have an idea of where we're going with stuff, and then they would react to that and probably talk at us for the majority, for like a half hour to an hour, and then we would have dialogue. I guess.
Are you saying this is on all the 20 different categories we're talking about?
Well, they would have looked at, this was 5 minutes of our board meeting, but it was just the idea that they would have looked at what we're looking at. And they're not going to go through each and every one and say, well, on this one, we thought this and da 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 da. But like overall, you're missing 3 really important topics altogether. Or this here, we can tell from the way you're doing this that you're not looking to these kinds of sources. And they would point those out to us, and so forth. So it wouldn't be granular input on a study or on any one of the outlines. Part of, I think, what the board was thinking was we have to be realistic about what we're asking people to do, because this is a big, to do, for instance, what Joyce and Bruce are suggesting is reasonably large commitment of time and energy, and not much. And then a third way to approach this is to try and identify 5 just 3 or 4 more young people and put them on the group, and they're on the group. And whether they do research or not, they're valuable because they're reacting to what we're doing on an ongoing basis. So those are 3 different ways we could look at this, and it would be conceivable that all 3 could be entered into play. But we also have to think about, how do we get these youth? And I started by, one of our board members is a leader of the Sunshine Movement. And so he said he knew a couple of people who might.
Isn't it Sunrise?
Sunrise Movement, I'm sorry. And he said he knew a couple people who were probably interested in just joining the group. And then the other person was Miguel Acosta, who is the co-director of Yucca and Earth Care. And they obviously have a whole array of youth who do a good deal of applied research and planning, and are pretty sophisticated youth. They've gotten pretty good.
Paul, what about Native Americans? What about blacks and Hispanics? And so we'd have to, if you did that, then we'd have another session with each of those groups as well?
Well, a lot of those kids are
those kids are all
of color. Yeah,
I mean,
most of them are.
There's only like 1 or 2 white kids in Yucca leadership.
It's still just a youth perspective. It's not I mean, Miguel is 60 years old or so, and so he's got, a lifetime of experience in Hispanic. So I don't think youth, even though they're Latin or Hispanic, would fill the whole need.
I'm not saying they would, but our initial discussion was that we're all old and we're all white. So this was a way to get young diversity perspective. That it may the challenge with integrating young folks like that, and this is a reaction I had to your proposal, is that with youth, the likelihood of their having deep experience with any of the issues or research capacity is it's going to be reasonably limited. I mean, I don't want to disparage those. Some could, but if we reflect back to what we were thinking about when we were 19, we probably weren't ready to sit in with a group like this and feel empowered. Roxanne.
Yeah, well, but I do think we need to keep in mind that the product of our research is not going to be for other researchers or experts in any of these subjects. The product of the research is to educate average people, and among those, high school students, college students, your average person on the street who maybe doesn't have expertise in anything in particular. So I think it would be good to have some people without expertise looking at these things at some stage of the game, almost like a peer review.
I have an idea.
Peers necessarily, but also I do like the idea of maybe having young people sort of look more broadly at what we're doing and give their opinion on whether we're
I have an idea.
missing anything, or maybe they have a different way of looking at something, why they feel it's important. So anyway, it would be good to get those opinions, whether or not we make any changes or do anything differently. I mean, that's kind of up to us.
Robert had an idea.
Well, no, it's just very simply, what if in each of our fields we come up with a first draft and then just go out and get opinions of 3, 4, 8 people. I mean, I regularly ask our daughter, who's 31, who's a young girl and all that, and what do you think of this? It's less formal than I think what's been proposed, but it's fairly simple. I mean, there's nothing that's going to be 100% scientific either, but it's an idea.
Yeah.
Thoughts?
I was thinking it would be very interesting, just from the standpoint of kind of piloting some ideas, to see if Wendy would consider doing a couple of sessions with groups of youth and use the process that she's been describing, see what gets generated from that, and then do a different process, perhaps the kind of thing Robert was just talking about, or some perhaps that's more formal, such as the proposal that was presented, and then kind of look at the similarities and differences as far as what they yielded by way of input and feedback.
Anyone else with ideas?
I would just say, I think it would be very important to do something maybe similar to what you described, Paul, with an outside group quickly, sooner rather than later, because I can feel, I think all of us are, we're digging into these things and our ideas are starting to harden. We're starting to, come up with ways to structure. Before, I would like to get some input before that happens to me anyway, to sort of say, are you really missing something? Is there some topic or issue that is of particular importance to us as youth or as minorities or whatever, so that I can recalibrate now rather than 2 months from now, and maybe then get the sense, oh my God, I really missed something. I should have started off with.
Yeah.
Other comments? How would people feel if we tried to organize? I mean, for one, our board is pretty diverse in terms of ethnicity and a little bit in age, certainly more so than our group. And then, but we also know people, and so do you. If we just floated, if everybody just kind of pooled the names of people they thought might be a good, almost like focus group, or where they would come, they would have looked at what we've produced so far in terms of, you know, our framework piece that's like 3 pages, and maybe at a couple of the more developed research inventories, and then they would come and share their perspective with us, and they may also have other ideas or how we can have a more sustained involvement from at a more sustained perspective, more along the lines of what Joyce and Bruce have proposed.
Mhm. Yeah.
What I liked about the proposal from Joyce and Bruce is that it's a very interesting take on the kind of more formal academic review that just about all of us here are used to, but it has this community involvement component to it, which I find quite intriguing.
Mhm.
Yeah, my only concern about what Joyce and Bruce, I mean, I love the idea, is that it's trying to get youth who will commit to something like that, you know, or not just youth, because I saw Bruce's eyebrows raised. First, with some youth, but also older folks.
I wonder if, you know, we know some teachers. I mean, I wonder if somehow we could spin it as a brief project for a class, either, you know, high level high school or low community college, you know, Santa Fe Community College or something, to take a look at some of these things. I don't know, it just popped into my head. You know, that way we get a group like we don't have to go out and find these people, they're there, and, you know, maybe they could do it as a class.
That is a great idea. I'd be interested in pursuing that. That's a civic literacy project. And I've been communicating with the New Mexico Activities Association, NMAA, regarding trying to generate some funding for a civic literacy project for this coming year. Because we're all familiar with the formal high school science fair, but how many times have you seen a social science fair? Probably never. And yet students from middle school and high school, I've seen them do incredible projects focused on strengthening community engagement, et cetera, et cetera. It's called Youth Participatory Action Research. It has a name. It's called YPAR.
Bruce, are you raising your hand?
Yeah, I am. I agree that the way we put this together, it could be quite burdensome if we gave 20 papers to 4 or 5 people, and then that would be a lot of work for them. I mean, somebody suggested, you know, maybe it'd be easier and simpler if each of us just found 2 or 3 people who, one is youth, one is Hispanic, one's Native American, whatever, to individually review our own paper, so that we got, and that would put the burden on all of us, but it would only burden the people, you know, for one document, one study, that we each approached these 2 or 3 people. That might be a simpler way to do it, and then it wouldn't provide so much burden on any 3 or 4 people.
Yeah.
Wendy?
Yeah, I just want to say that the collective wisdom piece, it's always done by individual interview. Often questionnaire first and then individual interview follow-up if they didn't give specific enough answers so that you didn't know what they meant. So it's all done by individual interview. It's not, no groups. Because again, you want uninfluenced thought. And that's a challenge when you get a group of people, like even this, right? We all look at whatever responses people said, well, should I talk or not? I don't know if I'll share, but oh, he said that, I won't say this. So these are the kinds of things that start to happen. And so then, you know, you don't get the voice of, especially the introverts. The introverts need help to be heard and to give their input. Extroverts don't have any problem, but introverts really do. But the whole point is that if you could, rather than having 5 people do all this work, if you had, and again, the group would have to decide what are the questions. You know, Robert, you asked who frames the question, or somebody asked, how do you frame the question? So what would the question be that we would ask these youth and Hispanic and other folks, so that they could give us their unique wisdom, not colored through what we think about it. What do you think about we think? No, it's this issue in our state, and here's the issue. What do you think about that? And then they inform whoever's writing that paper of their concerns that the person writing the paper has to make sure they get addressed, so that you're reflecting or representational of the people's input to you. So it's not just our great idea, and again, many of us great white idea. You know, you know, we need to get their real true perspective about these issues, and to help us. Like I don't think we lose anything, Adam. I think what you've done is great, and I also hear you. If we're going to get this input, we should get it very quickly on these issues. And it could be as simple as saying, we have these I don't know how many there are, 18 different concerns, and you could have them rank them. Which one is most important to change and be better in New Mexico? That'd be a one way. And then the other thing, then you could say, okay, now let's hone into those particular ones where you saw the energy gathering. Oh, the people are really interested in this. And so then that would just help us discern which of our 18 topics we need to funnel into to say where we can make an impact, based on the wisdom, the collective wisdom of the community about those issues. So that's the idea. And it does take time. I will tell you about collective wisdom. It's a lot of work on the front end so that you avoid a lot of conflict, and you are able to know that you're answering the people by what you're putting out, versus us putting something out and having people respond. You know, we might have to go back to the drawing board many times, Adam.
I'd like to suggest, we've only got about 5 minutes. I'd like to suggest that we start by seeing each of us can start to think in terms of people like their own personal review team. I think that's something we could do. And in the meantime, we could work out a protocol so that the structure of input is largely the same, but the people who are giving it are different. That can't hurt us in terms of getting feedback. And then in terms of what Adam was suggesting, why don't Roxanne and I try through our board and through Yucca and through, and not just youth by any means, for the next session to have another 8 or 9 people of diverse backgrounds and experience in New Mexico, having looked at what we're trying to do and the areas we're looking at, and ask them to provide, a half hour, maybe a little bit longer, a moderated input session next session, so that we've, in case we've really missed the boat somewhere.
Or 5 or 6. I think 8 or 9 is probably too many.
Yeah, and then we can continue to think about the ways in which either some permutation of what Joyce and Bruce could be implemented, and some of that could emerge out of this. In other words, if we get 5 or 6 people who come and share, and then they give us input, and we go into dialogue with them, it may well be that some of them go, you know what, I'd just like to be part of this. And if they'd like to be part of this, having 3 or 4 or 5 different perspectives that are younger and more diverse than ours, just as a regular part of our discussion, would solve a lot of problems. I mean, whatever method we use. So I'm proposing 3 possible things. Does that make sense? And I saw, but first I think I saw Robert raise his hand.
Just to interject very briefly, I mean, you know, the whole identity thing, gender, race, ethnic identification, and so forth. I think we shouldn't forget, for want of a better word, is it class or income level? For me, that's almost dominant. I mean, you know, we see COVID. Oh, there's so many people in Navajo country and in New Mexico and areas. Well, they're suffering. Well, I can tell you why they're suffering. One reason, they're poor. You know, I think that we really ought to get into income levels, or however way you want to.
Well, unfortunately, a lower income level is often comes with, you know, being a person of color. So,
of course, yeah.
So we're probably, if we get a group of youth of color or people of color, I mean, we'll probably have that class representation there too. But anyway, we'd have to see.
But at the same time, those same people right now are immersed in work and struggle, surviving.
Challenges.
And so, you know, joining us for an evening may not be their top priority. So I think that one of the other things I'd ask everyone to think about before we meet again is, how do you get the perspective of that low income community without necessarily being able to engage them in anything like a sustained process like this? Like, I can't even imagine asking I'm trying to think of a couple of people we know who are, you know, low income workers, and say, hey, would you like to join? And it's almost
Study
like,
group.
seriously?
Yeah.
It could be just simplified, you know, basic, simple questions.
Right,
That's
right.
at least my idea.
I'm just talking
you're not gonna
about
ask
giving
anyone to read
time
a brief,
to
a 20-page brief or anything. It's just,
No, they're going to give their viewpoint, their opinion about what's important or what's missing or what we're not doing in New Mexico. And they'll come from what Wendy called their individual opinion. And that will inform us. Also, Wendy, I also like what she was saying about pre-selecting what that group that's going to chime in, whoever they be, will pre-select certain topics that we're researching as priorities that they feel are important right now. So I don't think, I mean, looking at all 18 or 21, I think the list has grown to is a lot to tackle.
All right, well, listen, I want to honor our time commitments, and it's 7 o'clock. And so I think we benefited a good deal from what Wendy presented to us, and she gave us contact information. And so those of you who would like to explore with her how we could apply what she has outlined, I would encourage you, as you do it, to be very respectful of the amount of time involved and how much time we have to commit to a process. I'm not saying it wouldn't be wonderful in a better world or in another world, but just speaking for Roxanne and I, we don't have endless amount of time to devote to a whole lot of individual interviews and things like that. And then we can, Roxanne and I, and if any of you have any input or suggestions for people who you could contact who might want to be part of our next meeting, that would be good. by way of their role being to really provide us some guiding input before we get started.
And we would send them.
And we would send them the materials that we've been using to organize our thinking so that they could see what we're trying to do. And we could devote a significant part of our next session to that so that we don't get too concretized in our thinking before we get input.
So
Bruce?
are you saying that we should invite them or send you their names?
Well, we don't want to wind up with 30 people. So, you know, or it won't work. But yeah, why don't you send us the names and send them to us after you've talked to them and they say, yeah, I'm willing to do it. It may be that then it'll be quite easy.
And let us know roughly, you know, young person or person of color. I mean, you don't have to give, you know, personal details, but just so we can look at it, look across the names and make sure we're getting the kind of diversity that we're looking for.
Does that all seem sensible? I'm just trying to wrap up with and respect
we
people
can
wanting to go make
follow
dinner
up with
and
an
stuff.
email.
And we'll follow up with an email. And there is a recording of this. Be able to have that available to the people who missed the meeting.
Last thing I want to say is you can do collective wisdom through using tools like SurveyMonkey
Right.
very easily. So
I was thinking about that. Yeah. All right. Thank you all.
Thanks,
great
everybody.
meeting and
Thank you.
Thank you.
your involvement and insight and wisdom.
Take care.
Be safe and healthy
Stay
and
healthy.
hopeful.
Thanks for the leadership.
Look
Thank
for,
you.
look for our
Everybody.
election strategy coming out in the next couple of days because we're going to want everyone engaged in this. We have a really clever idea. So
All right.
that little tease, how could you not look?
Right.
Thank you.
Where are we going to find that?